Hi, everybody. Hello, citizens of Houston and Dallas. My name is Robert. I am the marketing coordinator at BRI Restoration. I am with our lovely owner, Betty Mooney. Hi, how are
Hey,
you?
Robert. Doing great. Thanks for doing this. I'm
Of
excited.
course, of course. So, part of this is, one thing that I always tell everybody is everybody has a podcast. So maybe this is probably the best medium to take whenever we want to communicate, some of the things that are going on in masonry or, just some general masonry things that we feel like everybody should be informed about. Whether you're a homeowner or a property manager or, a potential business partner, we just want to kind of, take the time and just kind of explain some of these things. So Betty, before we, get into the nitty gritty of everything, brick restoration has been around for 33 years. How have we been around for so long? Like, what's the story? Can you give us the tea on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll give you the long of the short, which is my dad started the business in 1993 and basically just started out of his garage and really just looking for a way to make brick repairs look better because anybody can go and slap up some mortar and some, cracks or, fix a little patch of brick wall with just whatever they've got or whatever's available. But it looks bad and it makes your house look bad and your house is your biggest asset. So he kind of started doing it just really on his own home and then just some neighbors and other family and friends and just realized there was a real need for it. So that happened, and then he has, two daughters, so that's it. It's us or nobody. So,
Yeah, no.
but we've really found it's a fun business, and it's really it makes people's homes look so much better.
And what really sets us apart, from other companies, not only are we not, just some guy in a truck, right? But we also have two locations. We have one in Houston and one in Dallas. Our Dallas location was actually opened up in 2021. And, how's it been over there, Betty? Like, what are some of the challenges that you kind of face, comparing Houston to Dallas, right? Because, it's a different clientele. They're kind of used to different things. Sometimes you even have to use different wording, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how it's been growing the business to Dallas?
Yeah, actually, Dallas has been a fantastic market. I mean, I think there are some established masonry companies that were doing a good job, but just our package of what we bring from customer service to the undetectable repairs to the clarity and the accuracy and our pricing and our scope.
Our brand promises.
It's been really it's like I think Dallas found the glove that fits. So
Yeah, I love that. Alrighty, well, so the other thing that we also tell a lot of our customers is, to make the informed right choice, right? And whenever we say that, it's always, best practice, right, is to go out and find 3 bids and to always find something that works well for you, whether in terms of budget, in terms of aesthetics. So why do you feel like, that's kind of our main message, right? To say that we're the right choice and, we're the premier, contractor to choose for this kind of stuff.
I mean, I definitely think we bring some unique things to the table. We have some proprietary products that nobody else has. I mean, my dad invented them. They have become kind of a standard in the industry, but still, it's something that's unique to us, to our company in Houston and Dallas. That's the precise mortar matching and color matching on the brick. And then our employees. We have so many great crews. Masonry is a difficult field to get into and a difficult field to find great help in. So they've been specially trained by us, and a lot of them have been with us for over 10, 15, 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just to touch on those like proprietary products that we have, right? So what kind of sets that apart from, just a standard, mortar that you could buy at any department store or any type of, Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like that?
Yeah, you can't get our stuff at Home Depot.
Yeah.
But our product is called a chameleon compound. And basically, it's just a way for the guys to use this compound, which is our own mix, our own invention, and they can color match it to whatever mortar or whatever brick the house has. They do that on site, so it's a custom match to your home. So that's really unique, and you can't just buy that off the shelf, at your local hardware store.
Okay. All right. Well, with that out of the way, I think it's time to kind of get into the nitty gritty. So we're going to talk a little bit about, some of these masonry products and like, these masonry services that, people might not be so familiar with. I think a good one just to kind of touch on is what exactly is, we've said the word multiple times, right? But what exactly is mortar? And, we also throw around the terms grout and and caulking. Could you give us a little bit of like explanation as to, these kinds of three topics between mortar, grout, and caulking?
Yeah, sure. I mean, everybody, almost, I would say anyone who's watching this video probably has brick on their home. So mortar is the grout, the mortar that's between the bricks. That's what holds it together. Your brick is usually just a veneer. It's not really holding up the structure of your home. So when there's cracks, when there's problems, it's not it's usually more of a cosmetic issue. Structural issues can happen, but it's easy for us to identify those things. Grout is really what you find inside your house when you look at your tile, right? It's a different compound. It's thinner, and it's really not it's not holding the tile up. It's really just to fill the gaps in the tile, whereas mortar is actually holding the brick up, right? You stack it on top of each other. And then, caulking is something you'll find around your home, also inside and outside, usually around your windows. That's more the flexible polymer, right, that keeps the water out and that sort of thing that you'll find there.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Well, just to kind of circle back to what we're talking about, sorry, because we're talking a little bit about, our history, right, as Masons, right? So when it would be the best time for a homeowner, a property manager, a business partner to consult a Mason, right? So like when would you say is the absolute like telltale sign, like, hey, I need a Mason to come out here and take a look at this for me?
Mm-hmm. I think that most homes, start to show some kind of aging or some kind of maintenance need, usually somewhere between, I'd say 8 to 10 years of the home being built. So if you have a home that's 8 to 10 years old, even sometimes newer homes, unfortunately, will get some settlement and that sort of thing that requires some crack repairs and maybe some minor repairs to the masonry. But really, once your home hits about that 10 to 20-year mark, you probably have some issues going on with the brick and mortar that just need to be attended to. That could be anything from cracks to chimney repairs to just general shifting that has caused maybe gaps around your windows and that sort of thing that you want to take care of so you can avoid water intrusion and that sort of thing.
And like, is this something that, homeowners should probably budget for? Like, are these fixes kind of, on the more expensive side? I know that everything is job dependent, right? But is this something that's going to be, like kind of break the bank, or is this something that, is this something that can be affordable, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, our goal, this, Robert, but our goal is really to make everything as cost effective as possible and avoid the more costly demolishing and rebuilding. If you let things go for too long, sometimes that's the only solution, right? Is just to kind of, tear it down and start over.
right.
But most of the time, 90% of the time when we come to a customer's home, they're surprised because they think they have a major problem that needs demolishing and rebuilding. And we say, hey, we can fix it at a fraction of the cost.
Right. Well, on the topic of fixing things, something that we get a lot of requests for are these white patchy stains that appear on the brick. I know what it is. I don't know if everybody else knows what it is, but it's called efflorescence. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why it's such a prevalent issue in Houston and Dallas?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things you want your home to look good, not just repair problems that are actual problems. Efflorescence is just one of those things that's a cosmetic issue. There's nothing actually wrong with your brick, but in the masonry, in the clay bricks, and in the mortar, there are salts that kind of come to the surface as the brick gets wet and dries out. Those
Right.
salts have time to kind of leach out into the surface of the brick. And so that can cause those ugly white stains. Sometimes those stains will just go away on their own, especially after cold weather. But a lot of times if it's stubborn, if it's been there for a long time, it'll actually calcify and it'll stay on the brick. And it's really hard. It's almost impossible to clean off because it'll just come back.
Right.
So we have a process of actually staining it and then sealing it so it doesn't have that issue in the future.
Is that something that like could be a potential warning sign maybe? Like, is that something that if it's, pretty prevalent around the house, is that something that maybe homeowners should be aware of? Could it be an
Right.
underlying indicator of something else?
It's not really an indicator of anything other than, your masonry is absorbing water, right? And one of the biggest enemies of any home is going to be water entry. And even though your masonry is intended to absorb and breathe out the moisture, sometimes that just can mean that too much water is coming into your house or it's getting absorbed into your brick.
Gotcha. Is that something that's expensive? Like, is that something that people should be, again, is that something that people should budget for? I guess that's kind of the reoccurring question that we're going to be having here is, are these items things that people need to budget for? Like, are these things that people need to, set aside a rainy day fund for? Mm-hmm. Is this something that could be done pretty, quickly? Just give a little insight on that.
Sure. I mean, my feeling is that masonry is something that you kind of, you set it and forget it a lot of times until there's a big problem. And that's okay. But the truth is the sooner you address things, and if you can even be proactive about it, especially with things like water repellent and things that would keep the water off your home or repairing cracks to keep the water from going into your home, you're going to save yourself a ton in the end of not having to deal with water entry or, damaged brick or something that's a little bit more serious. The same way that customers will budget for a roof replacement every once in a while, or they'll budget for air conditioning or, other types of major home repairs that have to be done. I mean, my preference is to address things early.
Right.
And a pound of, what is it? A pound of, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
There you go. So,
however that saying goes,
yeah,
right?
however that old saying goes,
water really is the enemy of masonry. Like it just completely destroys like the integrity and even things that are meant to support the brick, right? One of those things are definitely one of those things are the lintels, right? So the lintel is that steel beam that's found typically above garages and doors, and right. Whenever they tend to rust or fail, you can see that complete collapse with the actual brick on top of the structure, right? So is there, just something that people could probably do when it comes to, like making sure those lintels don't rust as fast, with our weather that we get here?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really impressed, Robert. I haven't,
haven't
talked to you about the services that much, but you've learned quite a bit working with us for the last few years. So good job. No, there's definitely, again, there's several maintenance things that are good ideas to do. Those lintels over your windows, over your doors, those metal pieces, it is good to keep those in good shape. And most of that, what that means is usually painting them. If they are a little bit rusted, you want to clean the rust off and then maybe paint them to seal the water out. And if there's a big gap between or sizable gap, a 1/4 inch or more, between the brick and the lintel, to seal that up too, so water doesn't get in there and end up rusting it out. It is what is creating the support for the masonry itself, not for your house, but it's creating the support for your masonry above that window or door. So you do want to keep that in good shape because that's what's holding up your brick.
We'll get a lot of calls where it's like, is this something that I need to do like right now? And the brick is literally just falling apart, and if it's in one spot, it'll be in other spots of the house, right? So what is kind of, like the typical cost of like a lintel replacement,
Sure. Different depending on the size of the window, right. Of course. But you can expect to pay anywhere from a few $100s, maybe $450, all the way up to maybe $1,100 for a really large window or
right.
a patio door or something like that, because we do have to take the masonry out in order to replace the lintel.
Right.
And one great thing is, I know you know this, but we've recently, in the last 5 to 7 years, we've really realized the benefit of using galvanized metal lintels, so that they don't rust. So we don't just replace it, we replace it with something better.
I mean, does that take into account the cost of scaffolding too? Because maybe the lintel's on a second story, right? So
right.
It would probably be a little bit more, huh?
Yeah, everything's going to be a little bit higher cost if you're working at elevation.
Right.
So we take all that into account, and everything on our estimates is broken out, so customers will know what to expect.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I say good like I don't know, right? Okay, well, on the notion of, discussing lintels, something that you mentioned is painting lintels, right? Painting lintels for the purposes of keeping the water out, right? Mm-hmm. One of the big no-nos that we get here all the time is, I painted my brick. What are your thoughts on that? You know, like painting brick. HGTV kind of popularized it.
I know.
You know, those blue brick homes, those green brick homes. It looks nice. Like it looks nice for a good photo op, but you
Or
know,
the white brick homes.
those white brick
Everybody's
homes.
painting their bricks
Everybody has those white
white.
brick homes. But you know, is it? You know, of course, me personally, I think it look gorgeous. But is there, you know, is there a dark truth behind it? Maybe like maybe people shouldn't be painting their homes.
A
you know?
little bit. I mean, you know, you go with what you think is going to look good.
Right.
And you can't fault anybody for doing that.
Maybe I want a blue brick home.
Yeah, exactly. And there's, you know, there's only a couple ways you can get that.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously we don't paint brick. We don't, that's not something our company does. And it's not because we can't do it, but we choose not to. It's not really good for the home. It's not good for the brick. Actually sealing the brick with paint prevents the natural moisture from escaping the brick walls. And so anytime that you get any kind of moisture into that wall, it's going to have nowhere to go. So it's going to lead to, you know, that humidity and possibly even, you know, water getting into your home if you don't keep up with the paint, and eventually it cracks or has areas that it peels and flakes off. Rather than painting, we have other options that we think can make your home look beautiful.
I mean, like, and it's even worse here just because we get, you know, like rain and sunlight, and, you know, we are in the epicenter of, you know, hurricanes
Hurricane
all the
season,
time. So,
yeah.
you know, as much as beautiful as they look, you know, I really don't. Me personally, you know, like I don't advise anybody really to paint their homes,
No.
right? You know, you kind of touched on some alternatives, right? So I know what they are, but they are, you know, one of our specialty services that we do. It's our deco washes. So German schmear, lime wash, slurry. You know, do you have any, you know, kind of insight on like, you know, kind of the introduction to that program? Because I know that was kind of, when we say deco wash, that's a coined term, right? So, you know, is there any like, you know, kind of insight on, you know, creating that package and why you wanted to create that package, maybe to solve some type of problem?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we love deco washes. It's a really great way to transform the look of your home. A lot of times when you want to paint your brick, it's because people say, "Oh, I hate my brick. It's so ugly." Or they are having a significant problem with their brick, like it's flaking or it's just in general deteriorating. And so they think, oh, if I throw some paint on there, that'll stop the water from, you know, eating away at it or you know, deteriorating the brick. Our deco washes are lime-based, either lime-based, like you said, white washes, or they'll be mortar-based, heavier applications, which is what our German smear or our slurries are. And the three terms are basically just different levels of coverage on the brick.
Right.
So if you have a house that is deteriorating the brick, you might want to put a slurry on it or a German smear. If you just don't like the color of your home or you don't like the style of the brick, then you might be able to get away with like a whitewash or a German smear and that route.
And you know, what's so special about those two applications, the slurry and the German schmear? What's so special about them being, you know, mortar based? Like, you know, mortar is the stuff between the bricks, right? So does it, you know, is there any type of functionality behind that? Is there a reason why it's probably beneficial to the house versus paint? Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it does adhere really well to the brick walls. It's going to be a permanent application. There are people who sell lime-based paints out there, and those do breathe. Those are different from like your latex masonry paint that, you know, we see on houses that we don't recommend. But those lime-based paints, they do allow the brick to breathe. The thing that we don't like about them is they're technically not really permanent. So even though it looks great initially, as the weather comes in, you know, rain and wind and all that, it's going to wear away, and you might not like the way it wears away. So you've paid all this money to have your house look a certain way. And then, you know, 5 years down the road, it looks totally different, and certain areas have washed out, and it just doesn't look as good. So when we use our mortar-based applications, those are permanent.
Right. And in terms of cost, like what are we looking at for these alternatives? You know, a lot of people go with the paint because it is a cheaper alternative, right? Like you can pick up a bucket of paint at any hardware store, right? Are there, you know, like what exactly is the cost for something like this?
Yeah, good question. It's maybe more affordable than you think. Really, our slurries or decorative washes, that sort of thing, start at the lower end around $5 a square foot. That would be for a really big house. If you have a smaller home, it might be a little bit higher, but per square foot. But in general, you're going to do this one time to your home. You're not going to have to redo it every 5 to 8 to 10 years.
With the paint, right? Because it's going to chip. So
with
they'll
paint,
probably
you'll
have to
redo
buy,
it.
new, probably couple buckets of paint every couple of years, huh?
I mean, yeah, you could buy touch-up paint, but really, you're probably going to have to repaint the whole house within 5 or 8 years, right? To make sure
Right.
it stays sealed, because cracks are still going to happen. And then as soon as that water gets in there, it's going to start making your paint peel off.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, in that spirit, again, on the topic of, talking about how water affects bricks, weep holes, that's another thing that we get a lot. A lot of people don't really get exactly what they are. Some people think that they need to be covered. Some people
Yeah.
think that, that they need to be repaired in some type of way.
Mhm.
Can you give a little insight on weep holes?
Yeah, so weep holes are these little holes, basically, gaps at the bottom of your brick walls. So if you walk around your home, look at the foundation, right above the foundation, your first courses of brick, you should see a little hole every, 3 feet or so. And that's there on purpose, so don't cover it up. It's there to help drain and circulate air into the wall cavity so that your brick does dry out whenever it rains. And so if you cover it up, you're just doing the same thing, by trapping moisture into your home, because that brick is going to absorb water no matter what.
Right.
Mhm.
On the subject of, the weep holes, another thing that people, I guess whenever they take a look at their house and they think that needs to be repaired is expansion joints. Could you
Mhm.
give a little insight on what exactly those are? Do they need to be fixed? What happens to cause those expansion joints to, to seem like they would need to be repaired?
Yeah. Expansion joints are really, really important. They're exactly what it means, which is when you have a large expanse of wall, brick wall on your home, every 25 feet, or if you have a wall that's 25 feet or longer, you should have an expansion joint kind of breaking that wall up, because it just gives the wall a place to move naturally with just a natural settlement of the soil. And that expansion joint is basically just a straight cut in the brick. And then it should be filled with a close matching color caulking, but specific masonry caulking. And that's going to prevent cracking in random places for your brick wall. It's going to prevent your entire brick wall from shifting out of position. So it is an important feature, and older homes don't always have them.
I see. Okay. Is that something that's kind of expensive to repair, or in terms of cost, like what are we looking at? And
Yeah, no, expansion joints are not expensive to repair if you already have them. Usually a clean out, again, depending on 1-story or 2-story, could be a few $100s, $400 or $500 for an expansion joint clean out. Just to redo the expansion joint. Sometimes there's other issues going on. You might need to have repairs done on the wall as well. And if it's a new expansion joint, it's a little bit more expensive to cut in a new expansion joint, but definitely well worth it if your home doesn't have one, especially if it's an older home and you're already seeing some issues.
another thing that we get a lot of is cast stone. Now, when I think of cast stone, I think of, like that typical stone that a lot of people do like accents with.
Mhm.
So like in their front yard, or like, like anything to elevate it up. But I think cast stone's like a completely different demon on its own. Could you give a little insight on, what it is? Can it be repaired? Can it be replaced? And like, what are the costs associated with that?
Sure. Cast stone is really beautiful. Usually you find it on higher end homes.
Yeah.
Usually it acts almost like trim, like the trim you have inside your home, but it's stone. It's actually manufactured. It's a poured concrete trim, basically. You might see it above your windows. You might see it around archways in your entryway. And they're really, really beautiful. They're very heavy. They're very difficult to replace. So the best thing that we recommend is to restore them. We can do repointing on the stone joints for the cast stone. And then also, if you just don't they do tend to wear over time and kind of have a lot of hairline cracks and get some discoloration. So we can actually resurface them. with proprietary materials that we use.
When you say resurface, what exactly does that mean? I think that people kind of, when we throw around these terms like resurfacing the cast stone, right? Like sometimes that may dissuade somebody, but like what exactly does that mean, right?
Yeah.
Like
I mean, it's basically a specialty type of paint, but it's very similar to the cast stone material to begin with. And so it adheres really well. And then it kind of just brings back that uniform color because the cast stone can get really discolored over time.
Right. Well, we also we talked a lot about a lot of different things already, right? But something else that we get a lot of questions of is specifically whenever it comes to homeowners are archways, right? So again, you find those on like those higher end homes. Could you give a little bit of insight on like these archways versus like if somebody were to see it crumbling, would it be best to like replace the archway or maybe do something else? Like what are the kind of alternatives that we have to archways?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Robert, if you had an arch above your front door and it had a big crack in it and it looked like it was falling halfway, what would you do?
Well, I'd be scared.
Right? You wouldn't want to invite anybody over, right?
Well, yeah, and I'd probably do my best to hide it.
Yeah, exactly.
But, we'll call a pro. How about that?
Yeah. So it is kind of a big deal. You definitely don't want that brick to fall on somebody's head or something like that, or your own head. But the truth is, archways, I mean, they're beautiful. We like to keep them in good shape if we can, and if we can salvage them, we will. But a lot of times, if you're seeing major issues with your archway, it probably has to be demoed and rebuilt. There's a few options. A lot of times, arches are not built to sustain themselves. In historically, if you look at Europe and the Colosseum and those kinds of things, the arches have to have a certain kind of radius in order to hold themselves up. But builders nowadays just build them in a way that looks aesthetically pleasing, and so sometimes you get really wide arches, and it just can't hold up its own weight. And so we have to come in, and a lot of times what we'll do if you want to keep the same style is we'll add reinforcements on the inside of the arch. So we'll have to take the arch down, demo the brick, and then we'll put in some additional essentially like beams or angle irons inside to help when we rebuild the archway to have something to hold on to.
I didn't know it was all like custom made. So if anybody has ever seen how an archway is actually built, like it's all done from the ground up. Like there's a specific and correct me on the terms, right? But like there's a specific backard, right? And it's kind of built around the specific shape, and then it's placed onto the structure. Yeah. So it's not just somebody putting up bricks willy-nilly. Like there's actually a process to it.
Yeah, there is. And it's a very technical process. You can't get just any mason to do arches. There are plenty of masons out there that can, put a straight brick wall together, but can't build you an arch.
Right. And also about custom arch lintels, right? So we also talk a little bit about, if you didn't want that specific shape, right, above the archway, maybe to do, like just a lintel and kind of leaving it just as like a straight line. Yeah. Is there any like benefit for that versus a archway,
rebuilding it or something. I mean, the truth is, that is one of the solutions is instead of rebuilding, if you already have a wide arch or you have an arch that looks like it might start to fail and you want to be proactive about it, you could install a metal lintel underneath. Essentially the same thing we were talking about with the lintels under your windows. It's going to hold the masonry up. The downside to that is just that it changes the look of the archway itself because now you'll see a metal piece underneath your archway. But it's definitely more cost-effective than demolishing and rebuilding the entire arch. Sometimes, if it's in good shape, we can just take down part of the arch in order to install this lintel, not the whole thing.
Gotcha. The other question that we get are, I guess we can kind of shift topics to curb appeal. Now, that is my bread and butter because everybody wants their home to look the absolute best, right? And something that we find is, if you love your home, right, you're more inclined to share it, right? So talking a little bit about what exactly is curb appeal, and what are some quick things that homeowners could do if they were interested in maybe increasing their curb appeal? What are some just real general quick things that maybe people could do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if you're planning on selling your house or renting it or something, and you want to attract buyers. The number one thing you can do to enhance the curb appeal of your home is just usually a good washing, a good power wash, right? Just keep things clean. Masonry should be power washed by professionals because number one, it's hard to get stains off. It's hard to get dirt off of masonry, but also you don't want to damage the masonry. So power washing is really great. You could also do the different crack repairs and just general repairs to the masonry so it looks good, painting the lintels, fixing foundation corners. If anybody looks around, their home and they look at the corners of their foundation, you might see that it's crumbling or popped off, cracked. That's not usually a foundation problem, but it is a problem for that particular corner that's holding up the masonry above it, the bricks above it.
You talked a little bit about power washing. So, it is, and you said that it should be done by a mason versus, a power washing company. So, like, are you saying that, like, anybody who could probably power wash a driveway, that's something different from somebody who would be able to power wash maybe your house?
To be honest, power washing should be done by a professional. I'm sure there are great professional power washing companies out there that can power wash your masonry just as well as we can. You probably just don't want to take that on as a DIY project. The power washers they rent you at Home Depot are not usually strong enough or good enough, and you probably don't want to be dealing with the kinds of machines that you actually need to wash masonry.
Yeah. I've always found it that, taking into account the style of brick too, right? Because you have that softer Mexican clay brick, and it's just more susceptible to like cracking or like crumbling, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, maybe not leaving that to like just anybody or yourself, right? To call the professional. The other thing too is, on the subject of curb appeal, a lot of people don't think about those pop foundation corners. Like, are those an indication of anything? Like, if you see those, is that just caused by natural settling, or is there an underlying reason for those to pop up?
Yeah, not too much. Same thing. It's closest to the ground, so it's going to be absorbing water. You might have sprinklers, those kinds of things. And then those corners are just tend to be the weakest parts of the foundation, so they can crack and then just kind of pop off. And it is holding up the rest of the corner of the brick wall. So a lot of times you'll see a crack start to develop because it's just that masonry, that brick wall is not sitting on anything, or the thing that's sitting on is cracked and, is sinking. So it's a really easy fix. It is something that inspectors look for when you're selling a home. So you do want to take care of that if you are planning on selling your home. We offer a curb appeal package to kind of identify all those small issues that you can fix ahead of time before the contract goes into inspection periods, and hopefully creates a smooth transition.
What exactly is in that package?
Usually it includes things like power washing, resealing or the lintels, or inspecting them and sealing them if needed, or resealing them, the pop foundation corners, and crack repairs. Those are kind of the main things that we know that inspectors will look for when they're identifying potential hazards to the future homeowners.
And not just, like for the inspectors, but also, for the real estate agent, or maybe even, just the homeowner prior to even listing their house, right?
Yeah.
Like some of those fixes, if you get them done beforehand, you don't have to worry about them later. And then that also helps other people because, you take away from the buyer experiencing that during the option period, because a lot of the times that'll just delay you, whenever you are, looking to buy a house, and then you want to factor in the cost of repairing these things. But is it expensive? Is that something that people should budget for?
It really depends on the size of the house.
Yeah.
That's a big question mark, right? It's going to be more expensive the bigger your house is. But I also, it's definitely better to address those issues ahead of time than have to use them as a negotiation point after the inspection. So for realtors that are, especially right now in the way the market is, you really want to address those things so that your closings go as quick as seamlessly as possible.
One more thing before we go into break, I kind of want to talk a little bit about some of these things that people are doing on the inside of their home now. So what is a way to bring, as an emerging trend, right? So a lot of people want to bring brick into their home, bringing those natural elements. So, like the stone, the brick, maybe sometimes people want to do like accent walls on their home.
Yep.
A, that term, and B, what are some quick things that people could possibly look into if they wanted to, bring those elements into their home?
Yeah. I think the term is called biophilic design,
Yes.
which is a really fancy word for basically just saying, hey, we want to bring the outdoors indoors. So whether that's bringing some natural elements like stone, brick, wood, natural wood, those kinds of things, greenery, the big picture windows that are so common now inside your home so that you can kind of have a clear view of your backyard or your pool or whatever you have. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of customers asking for masonry, not just on their fireplace, right? Everybody's pretty much got masonry or brick or stone on their fireplace, but now they're wanting to put it in their dining room as an accent wall, or in their bedroom as an accent wall, or even in their living room as an accent wall, media room. So it does add an element of interest. It also kind of brings a little bit of that modern, even though brick is pretty traditional. When you put it inside your home, it kind of has that modern loft feel. So people really like that. I think young people especially are really attracted to that city living and the the loft feel.
Because they don't really, like in lieu of, having a backyard, they would do something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they might want to say, hey, I want to, feel a little bit more like the outside's inside, or
Yeah, and it's more than just the fireplace now, like you mentioned, like those accent walls, bringing them into your media rooms and stuff. Okay, I mean, like, for me, right, I definitely like the look of, like an interior brick wall. I think that adds a lot of character into these houses. And it kind of really makes you stand out. And, you want to, whenever you're entertaining, you always want to have like something to just make people go, ah. And I definitely think that's one of them.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Reddit problems. We'll go through Reddit and talk a little bit about some masonry problems. And then we'll do this or that. We'll talk a little bit about, this solution versus that solution, or this problem versus that problem.
Great.
And we'll be back.